EPI is one of those conditions where you can be doing everything right and your dog still isn't improving. Because even with enzymes, what you feed can make a huge difference. Hi, I'm Paulina, I'm a canine nutrition consultant, and in this video, I'll show you how to feed a dog with EPI in a way that actually works day to day. Everything I'm sharing is based on clinical nutrition guidelines from this tiny book called Small Animal Clinical Nutrition, as well as published research, which I will link in the description. But first, let's explain what EPI is, shall we? EPI stands for Exocrine Pancreatic Insufficiency. I know, it sounds complicated, so let's break it down. Exocrine simply means releasing something out. In this case, it refers to the part of the pancreas that releases digestive enzymes into the gut. Pancreatic refers to the pancreas, an organ that sits near the stomach and plays a key role in digestion. And insufficiency means not enough or not working properly. So when we put it together, exocrine pancreatic insufficiency means that the part of the pancreas that should release digestive enzymes isn't working properly, so there aren't enough enzymes to digest food. But what are those enzymes? There are three main ones. Protease breaks down protein into amino acids, lipase breaks down fat into fatty acids, and amylase breaks down carbohydrates into carbo acids. Just kidding, into simple sugars. Once food is broken down into these smaller components, it can pass through the gut wall and be absorbed into the body. In a healthy dog, this process is seamless. The pancreas produces enough enzymes, food is digested properly, and nutrients are absorbed. In dogs with EPI, however, the pancreas isn't producing enough of these enzymes. So the food still enters the digestive system, but it isn't properly broken down. Because of that, a large portion of the nutrients just passes through the gut unused. That's why these dogs often lose weight even though they are eating well, and you might notice poor skin and coat condition. On top of that, you'll see chronic diarrhea or very soft stools, often much more frequent than normal, sometimes 6, 8, even 10 times a day. The stools are usually large in volume, pale or clay-colored, greasy and very smelly. They can even leave a shiny residue because of the unabsorbed fat. At the same time, the dog seems to be always hungry, sometimes eating things they shouldn't, such as poo or soil, yet they are losing weight and their ribs and spine become more visible. This happens because of malassimilation, which simply means nutrients aren't being properly absorbed across the intestinal wall. EPI is actually the most common cause of maldigestion in dogs. And by the time you start seeing these symptoms, around 85 to 90% of the pancreas has already stopped functioning, which is why the signs can appear quite suddenly and seem quite severe. So how does your vet actually confirm that this really is EPI and not, say, worms or another gut disease? First, they will listen to your story, the chronic diarrhea, weight loss, big greasy poos, constant hunger, that already raises suspicion. They will rule out common things like parasites, and then the key test is a blood test called TLI, or trypsin-like immunoreactivity. Often your vet will also check vitamin B12 and folate levels in the blood, because dogs with EPI commonly have low B12 and altered folate, especially when small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is present. Once the diagnosis is made, treatment is very straightforward. You replace the missing enzymes by adding them to every meal, and in many cases, your vet will also supplement vitamin B12 because, as I said before, that's commonly low. That's the medical side. Now, let's talk about the part you deal with every day, the food. With EPI, digestion is already compromised, so your job is to make the diet as easy to digest as possible. There are four main things we focus on: digestibility, fat, fiber, and consistency. First, digestibility. This is the most important one. We want ingredients that are easy to break down and absorb. That means simple, well-cooked food, not heavily processed mixtures or very complex ingredient lists. Highly digestible proteins like chicken, turkey, egg, and fish tend to work very well, and carbohydrates should come from properly cooked starches like rice or potato. Now, I want to address something important. If you've followed me for a while, you'll know I don't build diets around carbohydrates. Dogs don't have a strict requirement for carbs, and in healthy dogs, protein and fat can absolutely cover their needs. But EPI is one of those situations where we have to step away from ideal theory and work with what the body can actually handle, so keep that in mind. Fat is the most difficult to digest in EPI, and pushing it often leads to greasy stools and poor absorption. Protein still depends heavily on enzymes too, and too much of it can end up undigested and cause digestive upset. So you're left needing an energy source that doesn't overwhelm the system. And this is where carbohydrates come in. Not because dogs suddenly need them, but because they place less demand on the digestive system and are more predictable when combined with enzyme support. When we look at actual research comparing carbohydrate sources in dogs, not all carbs behave the same. Ingredients like peas and lentils are actually less digestible and can even reduce protein digestion. But simple starches like properly cooked white rice, white potatoes or cassava are broken down much more efficiently. And in a condition like EPI, where digestion is already compromised, that's exactly what we need. Let's move on to the fat. A lot of people are told to go very low fat, but that's not quite accurate. What we are aiming for is moderate fat, usually around 10 to 15% on a dry matter basis. Fat digestion is the most affected part in EPI, so very high fat diets often lead to greasy stools, but going too low can make it difficult to maintain weight. So it's about balance, not extremes either way. Third, fiber. This is where many diets go wrong. Fiber might sound healthy, but in EPI, it can interfere with enzyme activity and reduce how much nutrition your dog actually absorbs. It can also increase stool volume and frequency. So we keep fiber low, ideally under about 5% on a dry matter basis. And fourth, consistency. With EPI, stability matters. Constantly changing foods makes it much harder to understand what's working. What you want is a simple, repeatable base diet that your dog does well on. Now, in terms of what that looks like in practice, you have a few options. The most common route is a veterinary gastrointestinal diet. These are designed to be highly digestible, and for many dogs they work very well, especially in the early stages. But they are still ultra-processed foods, and in my opinion, fresh is and will always be better, as long as it's done properly, of course. One of the biggest advantages of fresh feeding is that you avoid large amounts of rendered fats and unnecessary fillers, which can sometimes make digestion harder in sensitive dogs. A well-formulated fresh diet can actually be very suitable for EPI because you have full control over the ingredients. You can use lean, digestible proteins, control the fat level, keep fiber low, and make sure everything is properly cooked. You're also not relying on generic formulation, but instead, you're building something tailored for your specific dog. For example, a typical structure would be a lean protein like chicken breast, a small amount of organ for nutrients, a controlled amount of fat, and a well-cooked starch like potato or rice to provide calories without pushing fat too high. Vegetables, if used, should be minimal and low in fiber. The key is that it has to be balanced, because feeding just chicken and rice long-term will create further deficiencies. And dogs with EPI are already at risk of deficiencies, especially fat-soluble vitamins and B12. So the diet needs to be complete, either through a properly formulated recipe or by using a supplement designed to fill those gaps. I recently added a simple chicken stew recipe for dogs with EPI to our Drooly app, so have a look if you want to give it a go. There are also a few things I would avoid, like very fatty cuts of meat, loads of skin, greasy leftovers, and high fiber foods or light diets designed for weight loss. These tend to worsen stool quality rather than improve it. And in terms of feeding routine, most dogs with EPI do better on 2 or 3 smaller meals per day rather than one large meal. Each meal should have the correct amount of enzyme powder mixed in just before feeding. Now, alongside enzyme supplements, you might also hear about feeding raw pancreas, and there is a good reason for that. The pancreas is the organ that naturally produces digestive enzymes, so when you feed raw pancreas, you're essentially adding a natural source of those enzymes directly into the meal. For some dogs, this can help support digestion, and in some cases, it can even reduce the amount of powdered enzymes needed. But keep in mind that raw pancreas isn't replacement for enzyme therapy, especially in the beginning. The amount of enzymes can vary, and it's not as consistent as a measured supplement, so it's something I like to use alongside enzyme supplements, not instead of them. One thing to remember is that early on, many dogs will need more calories than normal to regain weight, sometimes up to about twice their resting energy requirement for their ideal weight. As they improve, you can gradually adjust down to maintenance levels. The good news is that once everything is set up properly, so the right diet, the right enzyme dose, and B12 if needed, most dogs respond very well. Stools improve within days, weight starts coming back, their coat looks better, their energy returns, and to most people, they simply look like healthy dogs again. Some dogs will need more tweaking. Perhaps a different food, more enzymes, B12 injections, or treatment for another gut disease on top. But if you keep a simple diary of what you feed, the enzyme dose, and what the stools and weight are doing, you and your vet have powerful information to guide adjustments. I hope this helped you make sense of EPI and how to actually feed your dog now. If you want more practical guidance, recipes, and deeper explanations, you can join our newsletter. I'll add the link in the description. And if you have questions, leave them below. Thanks for watching.